Hey guys, breaking down more baits and techniques, and today I'm going over the Wacky Rig. So the Wacky Rig is probably the most popular beginner bait or beginner rig, and the reason is it's so easy to fish and just works so great, but it's certainly not limited to just beginners, because the reason it is such a great beginner bait is simply because it's a great bait in general. It catches tons and tons of bass and is very, very easy to fish. So even once you get to the intermediate or advanced levels of fishing, it's still going to be a fantastic rig and a must-have technique in your arsenal. So what is the Wacky Rig? Pretty much all it is a stick bait worm like this one, and then a finesse hook like this, and all you do is hook it right through the middle and you're done rigging it. That's all it is. Just a little finesse hook hooked right through the middle of the worm. Now, when it comes to choosing the hook, I do recommend specializing an actual like little mosquito hook or little Nico rig hook. Of course, we've all just taken like an EWG worm hook and rigged it through the middle of the worm and caught bass on it. But over time, you will catch more bass on a downsized finesse hook because the bigger, bulkier hook, sometimes the bass will see that and just not want to bite, especially the bigger bass that are older and wiser and smarter and have seen tons of baits in their life. They will sometimes avoid the bigger hooks, so I do recommend going ahead and getting an actual Wacky Rig hook, an actual Nico little finesse hook like this one. And when it comes to choosing the worm, it's going to be a stick bait worm like this one, a Senko style worm. When it comes to the brand, I don't think it matters. I've used them all. They all work just about the same in my opinion. And when it comes to the color, just choose some sort of dull, greenish, brownish color. You want something kind of natural. There's a million colors out there. If you try to buy one of these worms, you'll notice there's tons and tons of colors, but you really don't need to overcomplicate it. Some sort of green pumpkin or watermelon or brown. There's another color I'll use sometimes is like a baby bass where it's like green on top, white on the bottom. I've caught tons of fish on that. It's especially helpful if you're sight fishing because the white belly just helps you see it a little bit easier. But for the most part, don't overcomplicate it. You don't need the perfect amount of flake or color or translucentness. It doesn't really matter that much. It's a do-nothing bait. The color should pretty much just be some sort of natural, dull color, like a greenish, brownish color. And lastly, when it comes to rigging, there's also little O-rings like this one here that you can use to put on around your worm. They just make it last a little bit longer. They make it a bit more durable. So over time, if you go with the O-rings, if you use them to rig up your worm, you will save some money in the long term because your baits will last maybe 50, 75% longer. I don't know the exact number, but it essentially just makes them more durable, and over time you'll save more money because the hook doesn't tear through your worm quite as easy. Now, when it comes to the retrieve for a Wacky Rig, it's again very, very simple. The biggest key is to understand that the most important part of your retrieve, the time that you're going to get the most bites, is as that worm is slowly falling. Obviously, the flapping, popping action of the worm looks awesome, and it'll definitely draw some bites as well, but the most important time, moment, and action of your bait is just the slow fall. That's when you're going to get the majority of your bites. That's what you want to prioritize. Once you cast it out, once it hits the water, you just want to let the worm slowly fall almost all the way to the bottom, then give it 2 or 3 upward hops to bring it up in the water column, and then again, let it slowly sink back down. You want it falling as much as possible during the cast. Of course, that upward action looks cool as well and will entice some bass from a distance, but the fall is the most important part. Now, also, as that bait is slowly sinking down in the water, make sure you keep a close eye on your line that's laid out on the surface, because when you get a bite, your line is either going to jump or start going out really quickly or start moving off to the side. That's a bass. You want to make sure you watch your line because when it's falling on slack, you're not actually going to feel the bass bite ever. It's a very visual bite. You need to be able to see your line moving to set those hooks properly. So make sure you're keeping a close eye on your line as your bait is slowly sinking in the water. Next, when it comes to where to fish your Wacky Rig, you're going to try to prioritize fishing it near some sort of structure, like near a dock, skipping up under a dock, near a brush pile or a patch of grass, or near a pile of rocks or something. Areas that are high percentage where there's probably a number of bass around, because it's a very slow technique like I discussed in that slow retrieve. If you're just casting it out in open water and fishing expansive areas, it's going to take forever to bring it back in, and you're going to waste a lot of time because half those casts you might not even ever put it in front of a bass. So if you're fishing in open water, it's just not very efficient. Of course, you will still catch bass here and there, but it's just very inefficient, and you're better off fishing a bait a little bit faster. So this is a bait that you want to fish shallow water up near some sort of structure and just let that action and then the slow fall draw the bass out of the piece of structure to come and eat it. And then when to fish a Wacky Rig, you're going to fish a Wacky Rig pretty much 3 seasons out of the year. From the spring, summer, all the way through the fall, it's a tremendous bait that's really always going to get bit. During the winter though, I definitely put it away. It just doesn't seem to get very many bites during the winter. A lot of the bass will move out deep, and it's definitely a shallow water technique. And then even some of the bass that stay shallow are generally kind of glued to the bottom and don't really want to chase or move after a bait that's slowly sinking up above its head. Generally, a bottom contact finesse bait like a drop shot or a shaky head or a Ned rig will work better in the winter, even for those shallow water bass. So it's definitely a 3-season bait. Spring, summer, and fall, it is tremendous. And then when it comes to the water conditions, generally it's a clearer water technique. The clearer the water, the better, because it's very finesse, very subtle. It's definitely a very visual technique, and if the bass can get a better look at it, that's good. But you'll still catch bass in stained water. I just wouldn't fish it in very muddy water. As long as you have like 6 to 8 inches plus of visibility in the water, it'll catch bass. It might not be the best in the stained water, but you'll still catch plenty of fish in those highly pressured, tough fishing conditions. Once you get like really muddy water, like that chocolate milk water, I would definitely put it away. Go with something with a bit bigger profile, more sound, vibration, something easier for the bass to find in the low visibility conditions. But as long as there's a bit of visibility, then all the way to the ultra clear water, it's going to be a fantastic bait. And then another water condition, I would avoid the wind. It's a very, very lightweight bait, so it's going to be very difficult to fish in the wind. You're trying to cast it, the wind's going to blow it all over the place, and then as it's sinking in the water, the wind is just going to drag it off to the side or something, so it's very difficult to fish in heavy wind. So low wind, clearer water is definitely ideal. And then when it comes to the gear to fish a Wacky Rig, it's going to be your standard finesse setup, a medium to medium heavy action spinning setup with, I like a 12-pound test braided mainline. Then an 8-pound test fluorocarbon leader is pretty much perfect, but as long as you have a fairly light fluorocarbon leader, whether you have a main line or as a leader, as long as your connection line is a pretty lightweight, low visibility line, it's going to work great. And then the finesse setup, the spinning setup, it just helps you to cast and handle the much, much lighter weight baits. It can be very difficult to cast a weightless Wacky Rig on like a bait casting setup. So definitely recommend a spinning setup and then either a braided main line with a fluorocarbon leader or just straight fluorocarbon if that's easier for you. But generally the braid handles much easier and it's about the same price as a fluorocarbon. So spinning setup, braided mainline with a fluoro leader is pretty much the ideal Wacky Rig gear setup. Alright guys, that's pretty much everything you need to know about how to fish a Wacky Rig. Thanks for watching and feel free to subscribe if you want.